Oh. Okay, apparently I didn't answer a question to your satisfaction, LJP, but I don't think that I'm going to be able to do that. Your question was, to whom do these verses refer to? And I already know whom you think they refer to. But I think I offered a pretty good explanation for Isaiah 7. And in spite of that, it doesn't change, the fact that Christians will still insist that that also must refer to JC. But in Isaiah 7, in Isaiah 9, in Isaiah 9 verse 6, I think that I did offer up a pretty reasonable refutation for the idea that verse 6 didn't just get stuck in that chapter, that it's all part of what comes before and what comes after. And that comes back to this issue of context. Everything before verse 6 clearly doesn't really fit, doesn't really work with JC. Everything that comes afterwards doesn't work, doesn't fit, as I explained in the last video. But you're still saying, hey, you skipped verse 6. Well, I didn't skip verse 6. Because you're assuming that somehow I'm supposed to read something in verse 6, and all of a sudden I'm supposed to go, oh my goodness, if I had only seen that would have changed everything that came before and everything that came after. And it doesn't change everything. So, to address your concerns regarding verse 6, and to perhaps answer more specifically about who that text is about, most scholars acknowledge that this dual prophecy business, but most scholars acknowledge that this text more specifically refers to the son of King Ahaz. Now remember, chapter 7 is about the son of Isaiah. We find the answer to that in chapter 8. In chapter 9, we see this prophecy that clearly seems to be about a king figure, and again, I understand who you think it is. I understand who most Christians think it is. But when we understand that, I believe that in the Hebrew, I'm correct in saying that the tense that is used in your English Bibles, such as the NIV, tend to be incorrect. They tend to place it in the present, in the sense of unto us a child is born, when I think that in the Hebrew it's actually unto us a child has been born, in the sense that a child has already been born who meets the criteria for what we are going to, or what the prophet is going to write about in this chapter. And that person would be King Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, who would have been born. He would have been a prince, probably at the time that Isaiah wrote this. He would have been in line for kingship, and in fact did eventually become a king. And in spite of the fact that Ahaz wasn't a great king, Hezekiah actually does become one of the greatest kings of Israel. In fact, for many years, for centuries, there were many rabbis, many of the Jewish religious leaders who look back at Hezekiah as and believe that he was the prophesied Messiah. Now, I think in retrospect, that opinion changed, because after a period of time it became obvious that he could not have been the Messiah based on history that had transpired. And I would argue that Christians really should come to the same conclusion, or should consider the possibility, given the last 2,000 years, that the things that clearly are supposed to be messianic fulfillments have not been fulfilled in the past 2,000 years. They weren't fulfilled at the time that JC was born, and they haven't been fulfilled since then by his quote-unquote kingdom. And naturally, Christians look to the future, the second coming, as this is when all of these things are going to be fulfilled. Well, when that happens, and if that happens, and if it's JC that does, there won't be any question to it. I think one of the things that Christians seem to forget about Messianic prophecy is that when the Messiah appears, when this happens, there's not going to be any question about who the Messiah is. Nobody's going to be wondering about that, because it's going to become evident by the acts of the Messiah. Now, King Hezekiah fits here because he is because his reign was so substantial that, and this was really the concern at the time, was about Judah had just undergone this. Judah was still at odds with the northern tribes, with their neighbors, and there was always contention, there was always fighting, and the kings were not notably pious, and certainly Ahaz had his problems. And so this prophecy came as an assurance that God was looking out for them, and certainly Hezekiah, as he rose to, as he became king, showed himself to be a very righteous king and very much favored by God. Now, another indication in the text is the title Mighty God. For unto us a child has been born, his name will be called Mighty God. Well, that is the meaning of Hezekiah. Hezekiah in Hebrew means the strength or the might of God. And the other titles that are there are simply kingly titles that would be the kind of thing that if you walked into the throne room of a king, that there would probably be somebody announcing the king and using those kinds of phrases to say, the great and omnipotent king, blah blah blah. Well, these are the kinds of phrases that would be used to describe a king of probably any nation at that time, and certainly this fits with the time period. It fits with the birth of Hezekiah, and eventually him becoming this very prominent king of Judah at that time. And so if you're wondering who Isaiah 9 is about, it's about Hezekiah, not JC, Hezekiah. All right? Oh, and does that handle verse 6 better?